Hello, everyone. It's Lindsay Landry, and today I am here with one of my dear friends and soul sisters, Paula, and I'm so looking forward to introducing her to you and letting her share her magic with you. If you are just joining us for the Make a Splash series, my intention for this summer bash is really to bring forward these energetic conversations to help you to align your energy, to get more into your heart and your soul so that you can make a bigger impact and get more results in your business, your relationship, and your life with much more ease. And the conversation that me and Paula are going to be having today is all about this. So I'm super excited to dive in with her. So before we do that, let me just tell you a little bit about her. So Paula Jennings is a multi-faceted evolutionary thought leader, a magical and mystical alchemist who has traveled many adventurous paths on her way to become who she is today. She bridges practical and grounded approaches with esoteric wisdom, combining her unique path as a former Wall Street firm COO, Kundalini Yoga Teacher, and Transformational Coach to empower you to connect with your own self-identity and become free to live your life to its fullest expression. And so today we're going to be talking all about this, the path of, corporate, and then how we start to sometimes even grow our business from this masculine energy. And we're also going to be talking about how to drop deeper into your heart so that you can have more ease, more flow, and more magic. So welcome, Paula.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's the first time I've heard my bio being introduced. I'm so honored that you were the one to do it.
Thank you.
So good to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for being willing. I'm really excited to be having this conversation with you today, and to give everyone a taste of your mothering and the way you nurture, and the way that you bring this grace to, and really this permission to the healing work that you do. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So I would love for you, just to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've gotten to where you are today.
Sure. So I'm not really sure where I am today. So no. Kidding. No. So how did I get here? I feel like there has been so many like twists and turns in the events of my life that have taken me from Dublin to New York. And I feel like that was, I was brought here by something that was bigger than me and that I didn't quite understand at the time. And interestingly enough, like I got here, I literally came with a suitcase and one-way ticket and about $500 in my pocket. And as the magic would have it, was working on Wall Street within 3 weeks. My mother had called me up and gave me, he told me there was an advertisement in an Irish newspaper. So I have my mom to look towards what happened what ended up being like a 24-year career on Wall Street. And it was, as I look back on that now from this moment, I recognize that was my service. I was called to be there and to bring, I was even I was the COO, but also like somewhat of a den mother to a lot of men who were finance guys, who were very much in their heads, analytical, not so great at interacting or understanding how to support each other or even communicate to each other. And I think as I sort of reflect back, the gift I brought was this ability to translate and to bring coherence and perhaps some chaos, some order to, or maybe it was chaos to the order, actually. That I think about it, which in some ways is more true, because it was my role was to challenge. I had a seat at the table with 11 men, all of whom very much acted independently, didn't really know how to work together, and so I think my role in that was to advocate, for women, to bring another perspective. As the COO, I managed people, process, technology, and I was the grease that kind of made the wheels turn. And I always knew that. This was, it came naturally to me in some ways, but it came with a lot of sacrifice. It was a lot of personal sacrifice with my children, leaving my children. Also, I guess at a certain point, there was a disassociation that happened, because in order to survive and continue to thrive in that environment, at least thrive from a outside, or what success is supposed to look like, at a certain point, I feel like I went into a disassociation.
I would love to talk about that a little bit more.
Sure.
Because I think this is so, so important, right? So you were in your gifts, right? Like you were doing what you're actually really good at and you're made for. It's like when you were telling that story of kind of being the den mother for these men, I was thinking of, when we were at retreat together in February, and I remember I wasn't feeling that great. And I was like, I don't even know what I need. And you just tucked me in. And I felt my whole system relaxing, right? It's like you do have this totally nurturing, den mother energy where you create this blanket of safety and nurturing for people. So it's like what you're made for. And you were getting to this place of you were leaning outside of yourself, right? So
yes.
So do you want to maybe share a little bit about that? Because it feels like this is really important, where a lot of women and men too, right? Maybe they are operating in their genius and they're successful business owners or in a corporate job that's successful, but then you find yourself sacrificing your family or your husband or your children and these different things.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to delve into that a little bit more. I mean, for me, what it looks like was being away from home, like leaving 6 o'clock in the morning, getting home at 10 o'clock at night. Perhaps, some days not going to the literally not going to the bathroom. From the moment I went in till I would leave at night, because I was so not, I guess at a certain point it became, I was giving out, my energy that was going out in order for me to continue to operate and support or, live up to my own set standards. And I've realized now that nobody was forcing me to do any of it but myself, because I thought that was what was required, right? That was my conditioning, my thought process was that in order to be, and it wasn't so much to make the money, and despite myself, the money kept on coming, but it was more about to be accepted, to be liked, to be accepted, And so my door was always open. I didn't know how to close the door. I did not know how to contain my energy. I had not learned. I didn't know anything about energy. And so it got depleted, and also a building resentment that I was away from my children so much, you know. And for me, in order to cope, I couldn't straddle both worlds. I went into work, and this is what I'm working with now with my children and building back trust. But I went into work and I did not know how to be in communication with them as I was in work, you know. I had nannies. I had 2 nannies. I had, you know, morning nanny. I had a day nanny, a nanny who stayed like at home. Originally, one who lived in, who was incredible, and I was so blessed to have that support. But I think what I did not learn how to do was to be in work and then be able to tune into my children the way that I do now. If I happen to have to be away from them, I can tune into them energetically and have them feel safe. I didn't learn that, and I didn't really understand at the time the price of it, right? The price of that, not only on my children, but on my marriage. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is such an important conversation. And I'm curious, like emotionally and mentally. So you were feeling the stress of your children and of your family, but were other things moving through you at that time? Do you remember?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I was even. I guess I was. Yeah, I guess I don't know that I was conscious enough to realize. I had not learned. I had never learned to process my own emotions, or to even consider my feelings. And, you know, I guess my archetype or my blueprint is very much about subjugating my own needs to the needs of others. And so I was 100% at work when I was at work, like 100%. And then I was 100% with the children. You know, I did figure out some very cool things. I had Deutsche Bank hire me as a 3-day week, which in those days in Wall Street was not that common. I figured out, you know, but then would end up, you know, working on days off and stuff. But I did, and I also built a team around me that had flexible hours. So when I was with my children, I was with my children. When I was in work, I was in work. So that was, I guess that was a successful strategy. And I also never felt like I also didn't ever put myself as a competitor. I never felt that I needed to compete with the guys. That just wasn't how I saw it when I was there. So as a result of that, I feel like I had a lot of respect in work. And I was a true sort of confidant that people came to. But they never felt threatened by me. And I realize now that was quite a genius protective mechanism that I didn't know that I was doing. But, you know, I would tell my boss not to put me up for promotion, or I didn't want to become managing director because I wasn't willing to sacrifice, you know, having to travel all over the world, although I did do quite a bit of that. But I think I figured out ways to protect myself. But I will tell you, there was a lot of layers. There was a lot of masks that I wore. And what happened, really the pivotal moment when I realized that my life was, that I wasn't even conscious to what I was doing. I was sent by Deutsche Bank to Paris on a global women's leadership program. And it was an incredible program that was coached by women for women. It was a leadership program. And I was asked to draw a picture of myself and to include my head and my heart in the picture. And also to include my past and my future. And I lost it. Like, I can even feel it now. I think my whole, it had this huge awakening to this personas that I had created,
Mm-hmm.
that were not me. And I had no idea who the hell I was. I literally I was probably shattered and, fragmented in so many pieces, split in so many pieces. That's what I learned to do at a young age, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, and for the first time, I recognized that something, that none of this was going to work. That it
Yeah.
all had to change. It all had to change. So,
Yeah.
and I'm really blessed to have kind of had that, and to be supported in that environment with women. We were in this place that had been converted from a monks. It was a sanctuary. It was a very special place. And I think just being also close to Ireland and to my sister and being able to open up to her, because my marriage was also in really bad shape, which I had told nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the reasons I was also spending so much time in work. I think I was really unwilling to face what was happening with my marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so I feel like, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say just about like the disassociation piece in general. So it might not be you specifically, but the way that this happens.
Sure.
And then I feel
Sure.
like I want to move into like the head and the heart piece and go a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. How does it happen? I mean, it's all related to separation, right? So, we are all, living in a world that is, where the truth of who we are is not what is valued,
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. And so we learn from an early age to say and do the things that we think people want us to say and hear, or we take up. Each one of us, at least for me, it was over the years. In order to survive, I was a very sensitive child, an empathic child, very sensitive, living in a house where nobody really understood what that was. I've only recently come to really understand the sort of the depth of, or the extent that shaped who I was as a young person. And so I think even way before I got to Wall Street, I had learned to disassociate from my feelings, from my body.
Mm-hmm.
And had shut down my creativity, had shut down my, my basically my sacral chakra was completely shut down. So, and I was operating in a very way that was, but my wounded masculine was very forward, and it was very easy for me to, kick ass, just
Mm-hmm.
in that very masculine way. It was just something that I learned growing up in a household where brothers were footballers, and it was, more boys than girls. And so it wasn't torturous. It was something that was just, a, in a, I guess in a structure that is so, male, or masculine, that is so set up and so direct. Energy is a very sort of, stable energy, I guess. I did not learn to connect with the flow of who I was, and still learning that. So that was cut off. I would say what was cut off, or what it was disassociated from, was the feminine.
Yeah.
And
it's sort of like you said, this piece around it's separation, right? But it's like really deep down, what we really desire is connection.
Yeah.
And then it's like we don't feel connected, so then we create the disassociation.
Absolutely.
And Yeah, and then it's like it keeps us in this loop of maybe working really hard, and then we're not connected to our family, or doing the thing that keeps us disconnected from ourselves, like you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah, like just spinning. I just feel like it was a spinning, a spinning
Mm-hmm.
of doing, and not really. The beingness was not, at least for me, it hadn't. Well, it was not something that I was continuing to spin, because I did not want to really face what was inside of me, that I thought, at least I viewed it as something that was separate,
Mm-hmm. Totally.
something that was not worthy, or,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, and it's it's kind of, when I finally did stop, it was totally like that realization of that understanding that I had created it all, you know? Yeah, and I could create something different.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So let's talk about that.
Hmm.
So creating something different.
Yeah.
What would you say the first step is towards that?
Um, Getting curious.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was a beginning to ask the questions, to get curious, um, to start to listen to the voices. At certain times, I felt like I had 57 different personalities
Mm-hmm.
that were talking, that had a voice, and so it was getting still. Um, it was being in community too for me. It was beginning to connect in with other people. I mean, 2012 was really when we started to come into the age of Aquarius, of which I didn't know at the time, but there was an energy also. There was an energetic pull that I was being supported by, to seek out other people who were beginning to go into a self-discovery mode.
And I'm curious, so you're a Kundalini yoga teacher now. Were
Yeah.
you into yoga and Kundalini and meditation and those things back then?
So I had been in and out of them, but in and out, like when I was pregnant with my son, I did yoga the whole pregnancy. It's interesting. I always took care of myself. My 2 pregnancies were the times that I took care of my body and my spirit and soul more than any other times, because it was for another being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had, going back to my 18, my teens, my late teens, my 20s, I had always had an interest. I studied Shakti Gawain. I had always been curious, and had always been asking questions, but I had no practice. I had no, I never imagined, that I felt very trapped. So I never imagined that I could create something new.
Mm-hmm.
I really, when I look back in it, it was literally one step at a time,
Mm-hmm.
never knowing, what was going to come next, and also at the same time feeling the support of something that was really greater than me. So this belief system, or this trust, I guess, um, in something, like there was just, I guess, the signs. There was just things that happened along the way the breadcrumbs that you
Mm-hmm.
follow as you start to piece it together. I always think of it as a really large puzzle, really large puzzle. And there's all these different sections to it, all pieces, and some pieces get filled in very quickly and some pieces get filled in very slow, but you start to understand all of the circumstances that arise, and the challenges, and because I was knocked down by many challenges along the
Mm-hmm.
way, and also had so many angels. I mean, so many people that were just, I know were put in my path to offer me support, or to to have me to keep me going, to offer me support or resources, or to get curious about something they might have said to me. So it was that balance. So I know I wasn't doing anything. I didn't have a practice at all. The last couple of years I worked. Actually, I think around 2012, 13, I decided that I was getting out of Deutsche Bank. Didn't know how that was going to happen, and decided to start to do more of the things that I wanted to do in work. So as the COO, I had some leeway in terms of what I could create or spend my time on. And I started to mentor women. And then I got certified in executive coaching because I wanted to be able to mentor them and coach them in a way that was supportive to them. And I did that on my own, but I knew that if I started to, my strategy was started to throw myself into experiences of different things that my heart was pulling and tugging at me to do. And based on those experiences, decide whether they were for me. So I didn't put myself under a pressure to find what it was that my life's purpose was, because I don't really feel that that's the way that it works. I started to immerse myself in different experience and stretch myself by offering, to do, on top of everything else I was doing, like, to get involved in, I got involved in got the management team doing a lot of volunteer events, going to, Habitat for Humanity, like just things that they had never considered. And, the purpose was to build the team, to have them converse, so that I wasn't so that I could be less of the den mother and they would start to sort of take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. And also to give back, to start to feel like I was bringing something back to the community that we were operating in. I got involved with the Young Leadership Network, and started to just explore and put myself in places where the things that I thought I might want to do would, just to see what would happen. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of mentors. And it's interesting, some of those contacts that I made in those, as I started to do that, ended up being instrumental in me being able to exit Deutsche Bank with the severance package, which, as a highly paid woman, one of the top women in the firm, it would have been, that was not something that was, I thought was possible. It was only when I started to believe that it kind of came about. Mm-hmm.
Totally. So I can hear, it's like, even as you're sharing this story, I can hear like how strategic and how you totally like had that masculine structure thinking, but then you were also, like you mentioned, how you were like starting to create space for your heart and for feelings and what you wanted. And so can you maybe share a little bit more about that, like this piece around the head and the heart? And if some of the women listening, they might be more of that strategic thinker, like what are some things they can start doing?
Right. One of the things that I did that really was a huge catalyst was starting to claim back space, claim back time. I took a sabbatical. I took a risk. I just said, I hired a woman under me, and then I told my boss, I'm taking a sabbatical. And my mom was sick at the time. She had Alzheimer's, and I just needed some space. I needed to get back to Ireland. So just creating space. I think that's what I that was Paris was the first time I had any space, and that I had to face and think. And so as I created more space for myself and started to connect in what truly mattered to me, I also did a intensive discovery weekend. It was a series of 3 weekends and then a 90-day leadership journey that for me was hugely instrumental in me recognizing that, I had a heart, or that this heart didn't just have to give, it could also receive, and also like totally woke me up to my rackets, like all of the ways that I was betraying myself and all of the ways that I was not living in truth and integrity, like seriously not to my word, and it was a huge wake up. And I think my view on this is that it's self-initiation. Like we do this and we find the resources are there to support through it. You do the work, and it's, and I was ready. I was just ready. I just cracked open. I literally cracked open. I went into a room of 60 people that I didn't know on a Friday night, and I came out on a Sunday, like literally my heart completely open and in love with every single one of them. So that's how it happened. And I guess what led up to that was the carving out of the more time and sort of the reflecting back on all the ways that I had not, that I was living this, saying that I had talked about leaving, finding something that was more in line with who I was as a person for many years. But for all the reasons that we don't move and don't change, the security of our relationships, I was worried that my ex-husband at the time, he was my husband at the time. I was worried that he wouldn't love me if I didn't learn anything that time.
Yeah, and
that was true.
I think this is so important because I know even in my own business practice and my own self-discovery or self-growing up practice, I don't know what you want to call it, but I feel like my business has been one of my best spiritual teachers. Yes. But I know like we can go into these places of we like have designated time for mindset practice and designated time for like planning and designated time for all these things. And what I find is when we are sitting down and like doing a mindset practice, there's a way that it's not giving us that space, right? Like that's almost the masculine energy of like, oh, I'm going to train my mind to do this thing and say that I want this thing.
Right. I know you're 100% right. And I think the first stage of it is to recognize and to start to break the neural pathways to create new habits. And that is, to me, all of that is done through Life is Lab. So it's all done through being willing to find, to create community of people that you're willing to go deep on what's coming up for you, and to create that container, or to be part of a container that where you are willing to start becoming more of who you are, and being willing to clear and I was blessed to have found that that practice that really helped me to start to at least so that was done in the context at the time. It was done in the context of leading this extraordinary life and having these goals and all of this stuff, and like really what I recognized through that, it wasn't about any of the goals that I set. It was about getting closer to becoming grounded and seated, deeply seated in the worthiness of who I, in who I am.
Yeah.
Right. And when you start to go deeper into who you are and become more open, more willing to take risks and show and reveal and, share deepest, darkest secrets, if you like, you start to discover what works for you. And everybody's formula is different. It's not about having, it's about finding, and along the way, we experience different things, right? We experience, and things work for us. In the beginning, what worked for me was I went to a personal trainer for the first time in my life, and it was transformative. Like, that person was like, I busted through a bunch of beliefs about myself that just weren't true, and about my body that weren't true. The first Kundalini class I went to was during that time, and I remember having this flash of, oh my God, I'm going to be a teacher, like, literally. And I'm like, don't be ridiculous. That's never going to happen. I was still in Wall Street at the time. And so it's recognizing that, that the journey in itself is far more important than any of those goals or boxes you check off. Like, self-care is not just about going for the massage or the acupuncture. It's truly about recognizing on the deepest, well, first of all, connecting in with your own essence, right? And the vibration. For me, it was a vibration. I started to recognize this vibration, that when I was being true to myself, that I would start to feel this flow, this vibration. And then, from there, also just recognizing that, like, once I left Deutsche Bank, like, I set up my company straight away. I was still in this, okay, go, I'm going to be an executive coach. And then I'm like, then I realized that, like, really, this is not, and I'm not sure that, I don't even know whether I realized it, but my body just started to not want to do anything and just want to stay in bed.
Yeah.
And that whole process of, like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing? Like, I don't even want to get out of bed in the morning, and I have 2 children, and recognizing, and thank God I had people in my life. At that point, I think I was in magic school, and I had people in my life who guided me to understand that was part of my healing, my detoxification, and there was nothing shameful about allowing your body to heal. And so much happens when we're in homeostasis and we're relaxed and we're sleeping. It's multifaceted, it's multi-leveled, and it's about being open and curious and not getting stuck on what it's supposed to look like, and being willing to try on different things, and while remaining radically honest about what lights you up and what brings you pleasure and what doesn't.
Yes. Yeah, and the one thing that you said that really spoke out to me too. So you were just taking the next step, right? Going to the personal trainer, and then you did the Kundalini yoga, and you got the big zing, right? Like, you knew. And it's not like you were going to Kundalini to try to, like, say, like, oh, I'm going to be a Kundalini teacher, let me go to Kundalini.
No.
It was like you were following just what you knew you needed in those moments.
Yeah. I was remaining open to where I had started to follow what my heart wanted to do, and also recognize that the more that I tried, the more things that I tried on. I did a burlesque dance class. I just started to literally try, like, if I, and I literally incorporated that into my like trying, I think I had, for those 3 months that I was in this program, I think I had to try, I committed to trying something new every week. And I did schedule the self-care pieces as well, the massages. So that started just to become a practice, right? A practice. That because I had so neglected all of that for so long, was a really important phase. Was just to experience and to try, and whatever stuck, right? Whatever came. And then also beginning to recognize that that there were certain things that I was doing that didn't feel right, but I was still continuing to do them because I thought it was the right thing to do, like this, that other, not being sure. But yeah, some certain of the things that, as I said, the Kundalini really hit me. Like I had a experience of like this Rolodex of all my past lives flashing through my head in this class. And I'm like, I had never experienced anything like that in my life. I didn't know what was going on. And it really made me curious. And it was the beginning of me opening up to this piece of me that had been just not, had not been forward. Never didn't, I guess it was forward, but I wasn't conscious of it. And recognizing that, that the life I was living, or the life I had chosen, was very much to live up to what I think others people expected of me, rather than what I wanted to do myself, which is a hard realization, to have spent all of those years. And it's all come full circle, as I now recognize, I can look at it in a whole other way now, but I needed to see it that way to force me. It's gritty when you're getting to, when you're it's like the pressure of it, like to create a diamond or a pearl, like it's gritty, where it's got to feel really it's got to feel really uncomfortable.
Totally.
And that's what emerges the other side of it is, depends on how courageous you're willing to be, and to open your heart.
I was having a conversation with a friend today before we hopped on, to have this conversation with you. And she was kind of she's going through a big transformation. Her relationship of 4 years is like at a really crunchy spot. He moved out. And so I was having this conversation with her, and I remembered something someone told me probably like 4 years ago. And she told me, when I was at one of these places, it was rainy and stormy. And she told me, she said, look outside. And she said, nature is messy.
Totally.
It's the water and the mud that allows the seeds to be planted.
Absolutely.
And
the lotus has got to be stuck in the mud, right?
Yeah. And it's like, so how can we allow ourselves to be in the messiness of the creation? Because I think, like you said, it's like when we are in that masculine energy of trying to hold it together, or trying to control it, or trying to do the thing, then it's like we're resisting the seeds that are trying to be planted, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, well, for me, it was the evolutionary edges that I broke through. There was a part that I needed. That structure was important for me in order to make changes in my life. Do you know what I'm saying? Like to have that structure to force me to, because nobody wants to change. Like very few of us really want to change, right? We have to have something that really is pushing us to change, and so it's what I call it the drift. Like it's so easy to be lured back into the drift, right? Into the sort of fat, dumb, and happy life that I was living, right? And so there was a certain, I think it's only, I mean, this, and the other thing is that this transformation, this happened for me I dove very deeply, very quickly. And at times, questioned my mental health. So many things came up, right? Because it felt so out of control at times. But there was something inside of me that just kept whispering in my ear, the goddess, like, it's okay, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel like I'm at that point where I'm leaning back and recognizing that the creation happens, that I am the mother, that I am part of, like, she's within me and I am within her. And there's nothing to do. It's to be, right? It's to really start to cultivate this beingness, and to bring alive into your intention the state of being that you want to create, and create from that place.
Mm-hmm.
And attract from that place. And that necessitates, or it has for me, it necessitated me having to have great faith as I watched my severance package get, lower and lower and lower, or decrease. And as I started, but the more that I lean back, the more I'm sure that this path, that there's no other, that this is it, that this is the way. And I guess at some point, a lot of my fears just disintegrated as I became whole, as I started to pull back the pieces of myself and to start to accept them and love them, and understand the depth of my love is also the depth of my fear. And allowing those pendulums to swing. Quite in the beginning, the pendulum swings were very vast, broad, panic to, deep love. And then now it's more of a just an acceptance, a compassion, and recognizing the thoughts, and when they come, you being able to have a conversation with them, witness them, and ask them to, politely be quiet. And dropping into the heart has just become something that's not second nature, or, at least a lot of the time. Patience, cultivating kindness.
Yes.
And then as you vibrate at that, that love level, or that joy level, then that's what comes to meet you, right? That's what you're met with. And when you're not being met with that, being willing to go in again and say, okay, what am not to look at anybody else, literally, because it's never outside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's transformed my relationship with my children. It's transformed my relationships with my ex-husband. It's transformed, it's to the point where I get it now, this is messy. This is, it's a continuum, and the layers will just keep on. There'll always be the cycles, the seasons of life, death, rebirth.
So you have gone from, you have this pure heart of grace and ability to nurture and hold. And you've gone from being this outward expression of love to now it sounds like the way that you are loving, which I feel like is important to just name, and you can say anything about it that you want to say as well. But it sounds like the way that you're loving is completely different.
Completely different. Yeah. It's my kids are back. It is.
They hear us talking.
They hear. There she is, my gorgeous girl. There's a giant hornet and I need to kill it.
Oh.
I don't kill bugs, babes. Okay. Let me finish my phone call and I'll be with you, my lovey. Okay. Okay, let's talk. Yeah,
we're,
like
calling them in, right? It's a different way of loving.
It is, and moving, and moving from, and this is where I feel like moving from being feeling like it's it's my responsibility, to accepting that the less control that I try to have, or the more that I'm willing to engage from a place of neutrality. So it's about neutrality for me. Mm-hmm. It's been about reaching in Kundalini. In yoga we call it the shunya, which is just a pure 0.0, where you don't react, you respond from a place that's no judgment, neutral. And you have to, in order to get to that place, you have to drop all judgment, right? Mm-hmm. You get to drop judgment. And so that's been my practice. And, my daughter, I think I've seen the most profound changes with my daughter, because she was in the driving seat, because was carrying this guilt of not being here. And our relationship developed in this way where I was constantly trying to make it up to her, or on the defensive, and really neglecting to validate her feelings, or not the right word, being so focused on the damage I perceived that I could have, as a mother, like questioning my own motherhood, and then from then really being able to step back and recognize that was all a story I was telling myself. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't true. Really, it was not true. I have been like from the beginning, we're mothers, we're givers. Women don't need to give more. We need to receive more. And so what's now kind of what this is kind of like, I was away this weekend in Denver, and yesterday Ava was, she had a moment, and we talked on the phone, and instead of, coming from a place of feeling guilty that I'm in Denver and I'm not with her, I was just coming from a pure place of, how can you soothe yourself? What can you do right now in this moment? And truly the energetic in of itself, the change in that, the shift in that is just shifts everything around you, right? Mm-hmm. And then that allows you to start to love yourself more, because you're not faced with the same situation over and over again, and you actually recognize that by going in and taking responsibility and loving yourself without judgment, and fully and accepting yourself, that that allows you to be able to give from a place of pure service, not, and just pure because you want to, and from a full place. And so for me, it's meant a lot more patience, a lot less negativity, a lot less worry, and of all people, I think children pick up on that really quickly. My dog, even, like, I've been doing this journey with my puppy Riley, and like, she's gone from this wounded rescue dog who now will go up to everybody who comes into the house, and I've witnessed her heal as I've healed. I feel like she's an extension of me. And she's gone from being this very scared, pup, to just sort of standing in her, in her own.
Yeah, I love that. Such a beautiful way to bring all of this conversation together as well. Just the power of being willing, to be in our process and to do the work, no matter how messy and uncomfortable it is, because I think when we are really hitting those ego places. And, you know, for the person who works all the time and who is has an identity as that, right, as a successful business owner, or as a successful COO, it's like to pause and to have blank space really feels like a huge challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. And perhaps my, I guess perhaps the fact that I was in my early 50s, I don't know if this, you know, I went through menopause when I was 45.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time that, which was a catalyst to all of the feelings that came up in 2012 in Paris and all that stuff. But perhaps I would say that perhaps there is some benefit of having been over 50 as I was going through this process too, because all of my life experience, you know, because it's also because you're looking at, okay, I've got maybe another 40 years, 50 years to make a difference. How am I going to do that? To my legacy, all of those things start to play an important role. At least they did for me. And it made it imperative to just be in the mess and to be allow myself to, because there was no going back. Like for me, there was no going back.
Right.
That chapter was closed, and it was not. And what I recognized too, is I never valued the money when I was on Wall Street. It wasn't what was motivated me. It was this, you know, this stoic sort of I've got to support my family, very masculine. I've got to support my family. That was the role that I took on. And you know, and ironically, I was laid off after my marriage ended, you know. So it's kind of like it took that for me to be able to actually get what I wanted. I didn't know how to get that when I was still in my marriage, you know. And now I have, you know, I don't know, you know, yes, I'm a business owner, and yes, I'm building a business, but I'm still very much like the beginning of this journey, you know, when I think about people who've been working with energy and sort of all of the things that I've immersed myself in over the last 2 years and expanded myself on. The story is still very much unfolding.
And it always is, right?
And it always is. Yes, it always is. And the mystery, you know, like that's been an important part, is just to allow the mystery, just allow it to be, and to have, you know, to have the magical moments just to remind you that there's something that's just way beyond the scene.
Yes. So, are there any last things that you want to share with our listeners today?
Well, gratitude for you for creating a space for me to talk, probably for the first time really in this, like in a public audience, about some of this stuff. So thank you for that. I value you dearly, and you've been such a light for me as I move forward. And really what I would urge, or what I not urge, but it's this is the time. We've chosen to come here. We've chosen to be leaders. We have an opportunity to herald in a whole new way of being for the future of the planet. It's essential. So if people are thinking about, you know, if they're having this sense that something's not quite right, my call would be to follow that heart tug, and to reach out and find your tribe and find your community and find your support, because you will just, that's where it happens. It happens in intimacy. It happens within the relationships of the people that you choose to surround yourself with, and to get messy with.
Yes.
And you're safe, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The universe has your back.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Thank you so much for having this conversation today and for sharing yourself, your heart, your soul, your work, your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you.
If any of our listeners are wanting to connect with you, can you share with them how they can do that?
Yeah. My website is paulajennings.com. And so that's the best place you can peruse my offerings and contact me from there. Yeah, that would be awesome.
And you do have a local setup too, where you do yoga and Kundalini yoga as well, right?
I do. I opened a small studio in my house, and I do energy work in person from here, and also teach from here. And I have,
You're in New York?
yeah, and I do in New York. I'm in Long Island. Yeah, I'm in Long Island.
Perfect.
Pleasant Heights, Long Island. Yeah.
So if anyone's there, go check her out.
If anyone's listening, yes, I am here and I am ready and I am looking forward to.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if anyone listening, has questions about anything that we talked about, come join Soul Inspired Success Community on Facebook, the Facebook group. And let us know what's moving through you as you listen to this. If things are emerging, if it's moving something in you, please come share with us and let's be in conversation. So until next time.
Thanks, babe.
I love you.
Love you.